Hey guys, my name's Kim and I want to share a little bit about my story and my family and some of these things. I remember when my dad's death first happened, or even when I was going through a period of not speaking with him, I was always like searching online, trying to find something, someone, anyone who'd been through something similar. In my immediate circle of friends, I didn't know anyone, and especially after he died, it's not like I could really go around and use that as an introductor to try to find people. There weren't too many of those groups in my area, so I really was sort of like in my own little bubble on my own island in terms of having that firsthand experience with dealing with these issues. So I'm going to start by talking about when my dad was, I guess, coming out of my life gradually. So when I was 16, my parents divorced. It was quick and abrupt because of my dad's infidelity, and because I was 16, my mom maintained full custody of my sister and I. My sister was 18 at the time, so just of me. And I would voluntarily choose to see my dad for meals or stop by his house, things like that. We still lived in the same town. Fast forward 2 years later, I was in college and I was busy. I am from Massachusetts. I moved to Illinois for college, and I didn't really have any time to go and see him. I'd text him here and there, send him a picture. Occasionally, when I was home, which was a rare thing, I would go and grab dinner with him. And this is sort of just like how we had the nature of our relationship for those 2 years. We never really talked on the phone. Whenever I spoke with him, we kept things very surface level. He didn't want to introduce me to his girlfriend. He was still sort of trying to figure things out. I was trying to figure things out by balancing, speaking with my mom and then speaking with him after what he did to her. So that sort of started to complicate things. Fast forward, it's like the beginning of my sophomore year of college, and I'd had a really good summer working in Miami. I went home to Massachusetts and I grabbed dinner with my dad, and I asked if he wanted to come visit me in Illinois that fall. I gave him a weekend that I knew I wasn't able to come home for. I said he could bring his girlfriend, and I was excited to show him around the city, show him my college, like maybe meet some of my friends, and just all around sort of give him a glimpse into the life that I've been living so far away. When that trip rolled around, he decided to come alone, and he chose to stay in a hotel pretty close to my dorm, and we had an awesome first day. We went down to Chicago, into the city, showed him all of downtown. We got the popcorn, the deep dish, all the goods. We came back, we rested a bit, him in his hotel room and me back in my dorm, recharged, and I took him to one of my favorite restaurants, which just happened to be a sort of like rundown burger shack, but it was my favorite in the town. And that's sort of when things started to change on that trip. In general, my dad had always wanted things the way he wanted them. He was very opinionated. He was very dominant in his opinions. He didn't care if he made people feel uncomfortable by expressing his opinions, things like that. So when I took him to this burger place, he was upset. He wouldn't really tell me that he was upset, but I could tell that he was upset. And he later would throw back at me that I took him to a gross place because I didn't want to spend time with him. I just happened to have trashy taste in food. I digress. The next morning we wake up and we go to this coffee and bagel place near my dorm. to get coffee, bagels. I wasn't really drinking coffee, so I got orange juice. He got coffee. We both got bagels. We started talking, and he started asking me a lot of questions about my family members on my mom's side. How's my grandma doing? How's my uncle doing? But in more of like a prodding way. Now, my sister didn't have a relationship with him at this point. My uncle obviously didn't. My grandma didn't. My mom had gotten no contact because of his actions. And so I basically told him that I wanted to keep the conversation focused on us. I want to know about his life. I want him to know about my life. It's not my place to be the messenger for him to give him details about a bunch of people who used to be in his life and who have now chosen to no longer be in his life. And this just didn't sit well with him. My grandma was having a birthday party in Massachusetts that weekend, and I wouldn't have been able to fly back anyways, which is why this was a great weekend. I figured if I couldn't go back for the party, at least I was doing something fun by having my dad in town. Unfortunately, he really thought that I wanted to be at the party and that I didn't want him there. And he sort of got that idea in his head. And when he would get ideas like that, there was no convincing him. He'd get very hot-headed. He knew what he thought. That was his truth. And so he ran with it. We were inside sitting at this bagel place, and he was berating me, trying to tell me a way that I feel, even though it wasn't how I felt. I decided to walk back to my dorm at that point. I hadn't made a clear decision about what I was going to do with him, like for the rest of the day or in the future. And he ended up chasing me back to my dorm, throwing his hot coffee at me outside of my dorm, and just freaking out at me, saying that I'm just like my mom, that I'm mean to him, that different family members turned themselves against him and are now turning me against him, that I treat him poorly, that I'd rather be hanging out with my other family, things that I hadn't said at all, that he had sort of brewed up in his head. So I ran into my dorm's building like as fast as I could. The key couldn't have fobbed me in quick enough. And I basically texted him that I wanted to have a relationship with him only if he was able to have a relationship with me and not with me as a messenger for other people. So that didn't exactly go, I guess, as well as I had wanted it to. I had texted him that basically pretty clear, and I was bombarded with so many text messages, him sending me pictures of the campus, saying he would have loved to see where his daughter goes to school, saying that he had planned to give me money before going home to help me out, but I guess I didn't want that now, that he was just trying to be nice and have fun with his daughter. And I basically just reiterated to him, and I think this was the last message I sent him. This was in October that year. I basically was like, if you want to have a relationship with me and you don't want to lose me forever, you're going to have to do a couple things. You're going to, 1, express a genuine interest in my life. 2, allow me to learn about your life. I'd been wanting to meet his girlfriend of several years who he lived with. I'd been wanting to see my aunts and uncles that I knew growing up. So let me be a part of your life. And then my last was that he doesn't ask me about my other family members, and that he doesn't accuse me of wanting to spend time with them more than him, or accuse me of being mean to him because of my texting responses. So those are some pretty basic, in my opinion, boundaries to draw in pursuing a relationship with someone. The day went on, the text messages went on, and I was distraught. I had been really hopeful that he would start to be the person that I wanted him to be. I'd seen friends in high school and their good relationships with their dads, and then I saw the same thing in college. On move-in day, most of the kids around me had two happy parents unloading the minivan, and I love my mom, but we were doing that alone, and I couldn't help but think, like, even if my parents weren't married, why couldn't I have a dad that wanted to help me move in on moving day, or know anything about me because he was interested? So that was something that I was really struggling with and began to struggle with a lot that year. His contact with me became sporadic. I went home for the holidays and made the decision to not see him. I hadn't responded to any of his messages before that. He'd do things like send me a "hey, how are you" text. And that was fine. That's what I wanted. That's the relationship I was hoping to get to with him. But it was almost immediately followed by, "You're so mean to me. I can't believe you did this to me. You're just like your mom. Everyone hates me. My life is horrible." And I wish he'd just stopped at "how are you" so that I could tell him, and then I could ask him and see how he was, and then maybe we could meet up. But instead, he'd send me all these messages and put so much burden on me and accuse me of things that I just couldn't do it. I finished up my sophomore year of college, and I began to I finished up my sophomore year of college, and I was still receiving messages from him just about every 2 weeks. I didn't have him on social media or anything, but I didn't want to block his number because a little piece of me always hoped that he'd change, and one day he'd just stop at "how are you?" and I could respond, "good, how are you?" and we'd talk and make up, and this is something that I totally thought would eventually happen. Unfortunately, with what I'm about to tell you, it's something that became impossible to ever be a possibility months later. So my sophomore year of college wound down, and I went to Miami for the summer to do an internship. He'd still been texting me about once every 2 weeks. When I say once, I mean like one night he'd text me, and I could see in his texting and the way he was wording things that he was just getting drunker and drunker and drunker, accusing me of things, threatening to end his life if I didn't respond, telling me how horrible my mom and I are, how horrible my sister is, how horrible I'll become, how I am so mean for treating him like this, and how he hates his life, and I'm the person who ruined his life. So I'd get these text messages, and most of the time, I'd just delete the thread. I wouldn't really read them. There is an instance in July of that summer where he had texted me, "If you don't respond, I'm going to have to kill myself." And I take that seriously, of course, as I would with anyone. It was a threat he'd made before, but he hadn't made any attempt on that. And so when he texted me that, I was in Miami, and I got it. I was sleeping. I was working, waking up early. I was sleeping. He was up late drinking. I got that text like the morning I woke up. I didn't know what to do, and I knew my mom was still in my hometown. So I texted a screenshot to my mom, and I said, "What should I do?" And so thankfully, my mom called in a wellness check with, I guess, the EMTs or the police or something in our town, and they checked on him, and he was just passed out drunk and had no intention that they could see of trying to kill himself. And so he was left there at his place. Nothing happened. He didn't need to go anywhere. And I didn't hear about that event again from him. That doesn't mean that messages like that didn't stop. So for the next few weeks, every few days, I'd get a barrage of messages, inundated with messages, telling me similar things or how he ruined his life, all these different things. and I didn't respond. I don't even know what he would have wanted me to respond as. But all I thought in my mind is that I was getting further and further away from seeing him as the type of person I wanted to see him. I felt like I was moving further and further away, or he was moving further and further away from the improvement I wanted to see in him so that I could, be back in his life. Because I wanted him to be happy, I wanted him to live his life with his girlfriend, and I wanted him to treat me with respect, be the grandfather of my future kids, meet my future boyfriends, be someone that I can talk to and come and visit, spend holidays with, family things, without having to feel guilt or without having to feel like I'm on the spot, or without being treated like a secret spy for my mom and her side of the family. And then the end of August rolled around, and it was August 23rd. It was my 20th birthday, and I was home in Massachusetts for the first time. I've been doing great. I had just had my first experience student teaching in Miami, and I sort of that's what I do now. I saw it, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I found my career. I'd gone back to my college town and moved into my first ever apartment with my friends. Spent a couple weeks there just really enjoying ourselves. And then I was excited to spend the last couple weeks of my summer break visiting my hometown for my birthday, and then coming on back to my my college town and coming back and starting my junior year of college. So my birthday rolled around August 23rd, and I had a low-key day planned. My mom was working during the day, so I think I was trying to go to the beach. I grabbed lunch with her, I remember, and then that night we were going to see an off-Broadway show and to go out to dinner with my mom and her partner, my grandma, and I think my uncle, maybe my sister too. So there was a group of us. Early that morning, the text started. I got a picture of me and him from my third birthday, and some really guilty messages. It started out with happy birthday, and it progressed to, I've done so much for you. I used to change your diapers. Look at how much I love you. Why don't you talk to me? You're killing me inside. Why don't you talk to me? And the same thing happened as it had always happened. Throughout the day, I could tell he was getting drunker and drunker. My phone was shut off for the play, and once the play finished, I opened up my text messages, and he said, "I'm just a broken-hearted kid. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be so hard to do this." Something like that. And then I didn't think anything of it. I deleted the thread, I went about my night, and I didn't think about him. It wasn't until the next day that I learned via the grapevine that he had taken his own life, and we learned through the EMTs in the town after the fact that he'd taken his own life. And that closed my ability to ever have a relationship with him. And that basically started the most complicated grief process I could ever think about. Someone I'd mourned when he was alive, but still had hope for, that I left on bad terms, and then who took his own life on my birthday, with me being the last person to hear from him, basically. For right now, I'm going to end the story here. There was a lot that happened in the fallout of his death. A lot that I went through personally that really I had a hard time. I had a really, really tough time. That's not really in the past tense, but coming on, now that it's been 5 years, I can say I'm finally feeling comfortable again and happy again and hopeful. I'm going to make another follow-up video about the complicated grief that I navigated and sort of how I got through it. But for this video, I really just wanted to share my story and let somebody know who maybe has lost a family member or friend to suicide, and if unfortunately you're like me and you lost them on a day that's significant to you, or if also like me and unfortunately you lost them in a way where they went out and put the blame on you on their way out. I hope you can find some comfort in knowing that throughout the 5 years, I have improved. I have learned a lot about myself and about him, and I've learned to understand. I'm starting to learn how to forgive, and I'm also navigating, learning how to not be jealous of others. So it is possible. Definitely know that it is possible. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I wish you all the best.